Great. Okay, well, let's get started. So, as you're all aware, this is a webinar presented by the Center for Book Cultures and Publishing and Outside In World, discussing Arabic young adult literature in translation. My name's Emma. I'm a postdoctoral fellow, recently former PhD student at the University of Reading here. And I will pass over to Patricia Billings to briefly discuss Outside In World, the organization that the Center for Book Cultures and Publishing has been working with to present these webinars for several years now.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you to the Center for Book Cultures and Publishing, our extremely cherished partners in organizing and offering this wonderful webinar series dedicated to our mutual mission to cultivate deeper study of, education on, and advocacy for children's literature and translation. We are in our 6th year of these webinars, and we're so grateful to our regular audience and to those of you who are joining us for the first time. Welcome. Welcome to this vibrant community hub, out of which has grown so many connections, projects, PhDs. I'm co-introducing as a longtime colleague of Outside In World, the organization dedicated to exploring, promoting, and celebrating children's books in translation. As we know, language and literature are vital sites in the broader struggle for equity, justice, liberation, and self-determination globally. And children's and young adult books in translation are as powerful in this as any genre. These books are important, okay? We are thrilled to be highlighting Arabic literature and translation today. I studied Arabic in university and postgrad, and I lived and worked in the Arab world. And while I'm not proficient in Arabic anymore, it remains an anchor language for me, not in understanding not only the region, but in understanding the world. So our deepest thanks to you, Susanne, Sawad, and Marcia, for your skillful, impactful work and for sharing your wisdom and practice with us today. So now back to Emma to introduce our speakers. Thank you to everybody for being here.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Yes, so I'm going to very briefly introduce our speakers. Their full bios are available on the Center for Book Cultures and Publishing event page, which many of you will have seen. And then I'll pass over to Susanne, who's going to be leading this conversation and moderating and discussing Arabic literature for young adults with Sawad and Marcia. We expect the conversation to last for about between 45, 55 minutes, and we will have time for questions afterwards. So please do post any questions, any thoughts you'd like to share in the chat, and we will go ahead and discuss those at the end. So just to very briefly introduce our speakers, Susanne Abou Ghaida is a researcher specializing in Arabic children's and adolescent literature. She has a PhD from the University of Glasgow and most recently was a postdoctoral fellow at Aix-Marseille University. And then Marcia Lynx Qualey is a writer, publisher, editor, translator, and speaker, specializing in working with, translating, and promoting Arabic language literature for young readers. And Sawad, likewise, is another very accomplished translator and advocate of Arabic language literature for young adults and for adults. So please do check out their full bios on the event page. And I will now pass over to Susanne to begin this conversation.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for thinking of me for this webinar. I have a PowerPoint presentation Emma will be helping me with. Thanks a lot, Emma. But I just want to start by saying that over 10 years, from 2016 to 2024, every year I would lead like a 2-hour seminar to introduce students, master students at the University of Glasgow who were doing masters in children's literature and literacy, to introduce them to Arabic children's literature in English, sometimes translated, sometimes not. If we can just sort of show the PowerPoint. Yes, so what I'm going to do in this presentation very briefly, because I think it's more important to hear from actual translators rather than me. So I will talk about some trends in translating Arabic children's and YA books in English, just to sort of broaden the scope a bit. Authors, illustrators, publishers, and translators. So Emma has shared a reading list, and that's a pretty comprehensive list of all Arabic books that have been translated into English. I think we can all agree that we need more. They're not enough. If you can just go to the next slide, please. So this was like the cover of my PowerPoint presentation, and the title is a bit complicated. So it's Literature from and about the Arab world and Arabs in English, sometimes to begin with, and sometimes they eventually end up being in English. The next slide, please. So we talk about all these things. We talk about the actual use of Arabic books in Arabic, non-translated, in classrooms as multimodal, multicultural resources, Arab folktales and myths, books on the Arab world written by non-Arab authors, books written by Arab or Arab heritage authors in English, books published in English and Arabic, mostly by Arabic publishers. There are a few of those, but not a lot. But of course, what we'll be focusing on now is books translated into English by Western publishers. So there's the first part of the presentation where I talk about a whole bunch of books, just for people to get to know titles. But there's a part where I sort of want them to try to reflect critically on publishing trends, to try to see if there are any patterns. Can you go over to the next slide? So what I do is I distribute lists of 4 lists, because I divide them between picture books in middle grade and adolescent novels, of texts translated from Arabic, of books available in English, even though we won't be talking about them too much in this presentation. And I asked them, among the things I asked them to do is take a look at the names of authors, publishers, illustrators, translators. Are we finding any sort of trends? Sometimes they do identify trends, mostly they don't, but so maybe it's best for me just to present them now. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with the authors, and there are 2 very prominent names. Fatima Sharafuddin, and these are 3 of her books. There's a 4th book that I will be showing the cover of pretty soon. So Fatima Sharafuddin, she's a Lebanese author. And then next slide, please. And the other main figure is Taghreed al-Najjar, who's a Jordan-Palestinian author. And these are some of her. So she has 5 books translated. I'll be talking about the 5th soon. From so far, unless there's something in the works that I'm not aware of, translated from Arabic into English. I'd also like to point out that Taghreed also started her own publishing house, Salwa Books, Salwa Publishers. Even though now she's mostly a consultant, it's run by her daughter. So if you want to move to the next slide. And what I would like to, some other authors, and I will be talking a bit more about their books later. And I think our translators will be talking about their books as well. So 2 other authors, Sonia Nimr, who's had 4 books, but 3 of them belong to a trilogy, the Thunderbird trilogy, and Ahlam Sharat, who's had 2 books translated from Arabic into English. These, in her case, it's adolescent novels. I think also in the case of Sonia, in both those cases, it's novels translated rather than picture books, even though they have written picture books. So the next slide. And what's something I want to point out, and that's, so this was a study about translation of Arabic literature into English in the United Kingdom and Ireland, 2010-2020. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find out that among the 10 most translated women, I think among the 10 most translated authors, there's Taghreed al-Najjar. Among the top 5 most translated women are Fatima Sharafuddin and Taghreed al-Najjar, and that's just into English. So if we look at all the different languages, they will definitely be in the top 5 and top 10. And this is part of like my own life's mission work, that every time we talk about Arabic literature, we have to also talk about Arabic children's and adolescent literature, because sometimes they're treated as separate, and that shouldn't be the case. And also this is an insight into the process of canon formation of post-2000 Arabic literature, and I think the works of both these authors do belong in that canon. Next slide, please. So also the illustrators whose work has been featured most often, Maya Fidawi from Lebanon, Hassan Manasra from Jordan, Gulnar Hajo. So that cover is drawn by Gulnar Hajo. Intilaq Muhammad Ali, and some other names, Bahal Khatib, Betania Zakarias, Charlotte Shamma, Nadine Kaadan, Lena Merhij, who's written a graphic novel. I mean, we've already seen some of the work of Maya Fidawi and Hassan Manasra. We'll be coming across some of it again, so I'll just point it out, so that you can see the lovely work of those illustrators. The next slide. So this is where we start to talk about, publishers. So what are the publishers whose work is getting published from Arabic into English? and to try to understand what could be the reasons. I mean, some of it is speculation on my part, but I think it helps the fact that Taghlid al-Najjar and Salman al-Najjar, they speak English. That's a big advantage, because I've also had, for example, myself, publishers who don't necessarily speak English have sort of asked me if I can sort of recommend books for them to translate into Arabic. So that's definitely an issue to take into account about how these connections are being made between authors and publishers, among publishers. So these are like 4 books. And just to point out the work of, so Watermelon Madness was illustrated by Maya Fidawi, as well as My Brother and Me. The Ghoul was illustrated by Hassan Manastra. So as promised, you get to see examples of their work. The next slide. Also, another Arab publisher whose work gets translated, I mean, it's been translated at least 5 times. Kalimat Books is based in the UAE. So the 3 books on the right, they're picture books. Fatin is an adolescent novel. And Kalimat is a relatively well-funded publisher, which means they can afford to go to book fairs like Bologna. They're in Sharjah, which is also another major Arab book fair, and there's usually like there are grants that are given for translation. Publishers have an opportunity to meet each other. They have a rights catalog, which a lot of publishers in the Arab world don't necessarily have. So all these things, I think they play into it. The next slide, please. And now on the other side, so Orion Books have published 3 of these books. I think it seems that at some point there was an interest in books from the Arab world, which appears to be relatively short-lived, because these 3 books were published between 2013 and 2015. Just to point out, Little Green Drum, illustrated by Hassan Manasra, My Own Special Way by Maya Fidawi. The next slide. Groundwood Books, they've also translated, I think all these books were translated from Kalimat, and the founder of Kalimat, Dur Qasimi, is quite involved with IBI, and Patricia Aldana, who started Groundwood, she was a former IBI president, so probably that has played a role as well. Next slide. Another Western publisher who published, I mean, these are not huge numbers. It's just that there's so little translation of Arabic books into English. Like, wow, they published 3 books. That becomes a lot. So it's Neem Tree Press, which I interviewed Archana, who started the publishing house for my thesis, and how in the beginning for her, she wanted to establish a publishing house just for Arab YA. But with time, that sort of changed into sort of publishing both for adolescents and adults from authors from different parts of the world. And that recently they've gone into administration, so we're not really sure about the fate of these books. The next slide. Another Western publisher who's published quite a bit, 5 this time, but 3 of them belong to a trilogy, also translated by Marcia and Sawad. I think all 3 books. So the Thunderbird trilogy, translated by Marcia, I Want Golden Eyes by both of you, Radi and Rawan by both of you as well. And also, if you guys have like, you know, behind the scenes insight, we would, maybe you can share that if you're comfortable with that. The next slide, please. Yes. So I did very quick statistics, but in terms of the names that appear most often on this list, so Marcia Lynx Qualey, 8 books, Sawad Hussain, 5 books, Fatima Sharafuddin. So 3 of those books are hers. The 4th is My Own Special Way by Mithal Khayyat. She sort of translated it when it was published with Orion Books, and then it was sort of retold by Vivian French, so I'm not quite sure what that actually means. Ruth Ahmed Zai, she has 3 books, Vivian French, 2 books, Michelle Hartman, 2 books, Nancy Roberts, 2 books. So this is just a way to segue into the discussion with both translators, because of course, the reason that these translations come to life, some of it has to do with, you know, authors and publishers connecting, but a lot of it, in the case of these books, also has to do with your own effort, which we'd like to hear more about. But maybe first we'll start with your origin stories as translators of Arabic literature, both for adults and young people. Do you mind going first, Marcia, and then we can move to Sawad?
Not at all. I can go first. So when Susanne sent this question, it's funny because I usually answer this question as what is the origin story of Arab Lit when I have a sort of a patter down. Nobody has ever asked me this origin story before. I think in large part because I don't primarily see myself or present as a translator. But what is my origin story is that I felt that Arabic children's literature was not getting any space in the translation landscape. Arabic literary translation was mostly a sort of a high prestige literature where people were sort of competing over award books and sort of acclaimed books and books by adults. There was very little interest in books by young readers. I think, I mean, I really actually don't remember. When I was pregnant with probably Rami, I would go around the book fairs and pick up a lot of books and talk to authors, and I sort of I wanted these, you know, I wanted to be able to share these books in the same kind of way. I wanted these books to be able to enrich the English language landscape. And I just couldn't find and didn't see other translators who were trying to do this work. So I guess I got involved because it didn't seem like a space. I mean, I'm always happy to step back if other people now want to take up this work. For me, it was only, I didn't see anybody else doing it. So, and then also there was a point at which I read Fatin, and of course Fatima wanted to do that herself.
Yeah.
And I read Wondrous Journeys, and then I spent 5 years pitching it, which I can talk about later.
Wow, I didn't know that. 5 years.
So over to you, Sawad.
I must acknowledge Marcia doesn't like for me to say this, but she's like a mentor to me, and so yeah, she's like, what? We're friends, but yeah. So in terms of translating YA literature specifically, and then I'll broaden it out briefly, but YA literature, I was inspired actually by Marcia to spend more sort of time in that field. And I think when I became a mother is really the catalyst, and I was like, I'm not seeing the sort of books that I would want to be reading with my son. I think growing up I read a lot of, and you can tell by my American accent, but I'm not American, I'm Pakistani, but learned English from American teachers. So I read a lot of like Babysitter's Club, Judy Blume, Ramona, Encyclopedia Brown. So there's also always that sort of like, where am I in these stories? Like, people who perhaps have life experiences that are more similar to mine. And so I think that also was something that had been percolating. And then I had started translating Arabic literature in like 2008. But YA came much later, but I also struggled to kind of break into how to translate YA literature, because sourcing the books, there's like a paucity of reviews online in Arabic about young adult literature. Like, as you were saying, Marcia, it's like Arabic literature and the translation of it has a lot of prestige attached to it. So books for young readers are not really given much attention. And so it's difficult to find in the vibrant sort of booktubing, culture of Arabic language books that exists out there. I mean, there's like a lot of bookstagrammers and, a lot of posts about that, but to find people reviewing why has slightly seen an uptick, but not very much. And so I had always had an interest, but really struggled to find the books and then, make contact with publishers and get them to trust me. But eventually, once I had traction with my adult translations, then people of YA were like, okay, if you can do an adult book, then I guess you can do a YA book as well. So that's kind of how that came about. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a question also for both of you about the process of pitching books. Like, Marcia, you discussed that you read a book, you absolutely fell in love with it. This absolutely must get translated. Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth. And you just sort of went around. And so how does that work what's the process like? Is it difficult? I imagine, yes, that it takes time. So I want to start with you, Marcia, and then also to Sawad, because I imagine you've either pitched books together or you've had your own sort of, you know,
We have.
like love at first sight.
Yeah, so I don't know what the first book I published was, but definitely Wondrous Journeys was the first one I started pitching. And I pitched it for so long because, in part, I didn't know what I was doing, and particularly didn't know what I was doing in the YA literature category. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for this. With grown-up literature, or whatever we're calling it, categories are more fluid, right?
Mhm.
You don't have to, if something doesn't exactly fit into science fiction, that's okay. We'll find a sort of a speculative adjacent thing if something doesn't exactly fit in. But when it comes to categorization of children's literature, publishers are much more serious about this must be this number of pages.
Mhm.
What I got about Wondrous Journeys is she grows. In fact, it was not published as YA, it was categorized as literary fiction when it was
Mhm.
published. And then I saw on the Goodreads reviews, there's one guy who says, actually, this reads like YA. Why was it published as literary fiction? And well, it wasn't my decision. In fact, I worked so long and I got so many responses from publishers that said, wow, I love this novel, but this is not YA because the protagonist grows up, Qamar grows up.
Mhm.
So I think pitching becomes much more difficult for young readers because the expectations are more fixed on the publishing side. Go ahead, Sawad.
Yes, I forgot to thank you, Suzanne, for your all your hard work and like your categorization and statistics, and I love it. Like I love digging into all of that, specifically for
And your
YA.
PhD research, so awesome.
Thank you.
With regards to pitching YA, to be honest, I find it easier than pitching adult literature, but there's a smaller pool of publishers you can approach. But as of late, I have been approaching publishers who either have never done a translation,
Mhm.
and so having conversations with editors to like, why don't you consider this? And they're open to it. But as Marcia said, the sort of expectations of what a YA book reads, sounds, looks like in terms of, how on the page, but also like the length of it is very specific. And as a result, my YA authors are being asked, which we'll probably, move into later in this conversation, to change quite a few things in their books. And so the audience of the English language version of these works of creativity are receiving something different than what the original Arabic language audience experienced. And so there's a lot of delicate balance of ethics there, and making sure the author is always aware of everything that is happening and has the right to push back, but also puts the translator into this sort of awkward
Yeah.
position of advocating for the original essence and spirit of the book, but also wanting to see it out in the hands of readers, right? So I will leave that there for now.
Yeah. Thank you. In terms of books you've pitched, sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully, and we'll be talking about some of the less successful ones in the end, where you get to make the pitch of your lives. Do you feel are publishers attracted to certain themes more than others, to the point? And does it happen that with time you find yourself maybe falling in love with particular books, but knowing maybe that's not the sort of book that's going to appeal to publishers? And what are those expectations, whether they're expressed directly, indirectly, that you've started just from your experience of pitching books, start to like all these unwritten and sometimes written rules about what sort of books deserve, YA books do actually have a chance to be translated.
I mean,
So
okay. So for me, there's a heavy emphasis on something that's sort of ethnographically relevant, like if it's this novel has to be sort of representing where the space that it's from, right? It can't be a story. It must be telling us about Palestine, about Syria, about whatever. So I think that is like a kind of a baseline. Publishers want something that kind of hooks into this sort of representative, like we can present it in a classroom, or because it fits in this certain, it's about refugees, it can slide in some kind of category that can easily market it. This is what then the things that I find the most frustrating are like, it must be this number of pages. Arabic is flexible. Also, what literature? I mean, is a book for 13-year-olds or 16-year-olds? Arabic is a little bit more, whereas English, no, it's this age, and I all the time I'm getting back, this is, no, you're wrong, not for this age. I find it, Sawad is a much better pitcher than I am, though, so I'm gonna ask her.
Yeah.
I will, can you bring you the stories of all my failures? I have so many books on my hard drive that are complete that some publisher told me they were interested in and ghosted me.
What? Oh my goodness. I didn't know that they're complete. That's heartbreaking for me. We need to open our own publishing house. Is there anyone willing to fund us in the audience? Yes. Oh, there's a yes. Okay. Bringing it back to pitching, I think what was really interesting is when I was speaking to, and we're still in conversation, so I can't give the name of the house yet, but hopefully once we sign a contract, then I'll be able to share that. But initially, with the conversation with an editor of a large publishing house in the US, has this, like, they have a few children's imprints. They wanted something adventure, fantasy, and they're like, we don't do translations. But then when they heard that I had done a translation, thanks to the introduction of Marcia, actually, with Levine Corrido Books, which is run by Arthur Levine, who is known as the editor who brought Harry Potter to the US. So he is held in very high esteem. Then the tone of the conversation changed, and they were open to hearing some further ideas. But as Marcia said, they really latched on to wanting a title then that is a representation of the culture that is being written about. And as a result, I would say in like 3 of the YA books, no, 2 that I've done on my own so far, I've been the author has been asked to expand, by giving more details of sensory details, like what did this smell like what did it feel like, what did it look like. But also in the attempt to lengthen the book, because English YA really bleeds into 600, 700 page books, which is not the case with Arabic YA. And that has posed quite a few problems when I'm translating. I put a clause into my contract saying anything, for example, if I'm asked to translate additional material over 3,000 or 2,000 words, I will charge this rate, because otherwise I was translating like swaths of additional new material supplied by the author, requested by the editor, but then I'm not getting paid for it. So, sorry, we come back to my sort of theme song, which is unpaid labor is no good. And so, it's just something for anyone who does want to get into Arabic to English translation out there, specifically of YA or middle grade books. Keep this in mind, that you need to be prepared to translate material that was not in the original Arabic that has been written by the author.
I just want to add.
No,
go ahead, Marcia.
Say one of my experiences, even when it has been accepted, there's a scene where there's in an apartment in Syria, and there's a picture of Spider-Man on the wall. And this is what the text said. And this is like, come on, kids around the world make drawings of Spider-Man. It's the way life is. But I was told, like, shouldn't it be localized? Can we make this like, a decorative plate or something. I'm like, decorative plate?
Falafel. They should have posters of falafel.
No, this is, I mean, so I think, to me, at this point, part of the translator's job is to defend the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to sort of follow up on that for both of you. Once you start to get a sense of some of these requirements, do you find yourself with time that you internalize them, including in thinking, ooh, maybe this book could be translated, or do you find yourself more pushing back against them?
Wow, I think for me, I don't do it consciously, but maybe I'm not good at internalizing these kinds of things because I find myself banging my head against the same things over and over again. Even when I'm just, sometimes I just will pitch a book to a publisher, not because I am saying I'll do it. I just I read it, I loved it, I want you to bring it out. And so no, I guess I have the same criteria. I'm passionate about it. I believe that there's an audience for it. And those are my criteria, whatever publishers think, because also publishers change their minds, right?
Okay.
These things change. My criteria probably don't. So I keep making the same errors over and over.
No, you're doing the good work, Marcia.
Yeah.
You're doing the good work. I must admit, I have dipped my toes into, the toxicity that is capitalism and commercialism. So when I am looking at books, I do have a hard think about, is this book commercially viable? Because putting all that time into pitching, I'm not getting paid for it to do the sample or summary. And so there was a book that Takhlid al-Najjar had written, I think it was Prisoner 118 or something, which I loved. And, I love her work. It was a page turner, but there wasn't enough local specificity that I thought publishers would pick it up. That book is still free to pitch for people. If people want to pitch it, you might have a better action plan than what I could think of in my head. But after reading it, I was like, I love it, but I don't think it's going to get picked up. So I'm going to move on to something else. That doesn't mean to say I do that with all my books, but as I said, with YA, the pool is very small of publishers who are publishing Arabic YA in translation, or any language like YA literature in translation, right? So you have to, when you're taking for me, like when I'm shooting my shots, I saw like the sports analogy, like I really need to make sure that I have the best sort of chances of it going in. Yeah.
I wanted to get a bit into sort of the nitty gritty. Do you, in terms of contacting publishers, how do you identify them? How do you contact them? Is it that in certain cases they're the ones who are getting in touch with you?
Are they the ones who get in touch with us?
Never.
What? I mean, not in my experience. I think, there's I'm a terrible pitcher and I'm terrible at capitalism. It's not that I'm like above it. I can't manage to succeed in it. So I try my hand at other things. But I guess the thing that we do well in the Arabic English literary translation field, especially in the works for young adults, is share information. I think there's maybe other language pairs where people are more competitive. I find us to be more collaborative. So if Ruth, for instance, reaches out and makes a contact with a publisher for the first time, she shares that with, certainly as soon as I made contact with Levine Credo, and it's possible that they reached out to me first, I cannot remember, then I share that with everybody as well. So I think that we are constantly, I think this is the moment where we have to push to get out of the small, the few publishing houses that are putting out YA literature for young readers in translation. And so I think door knocking is a big part of it, but as Sawad said, it's tiring and unpaid, and so it's hard.
Okay. How about, what's your process, Sawad?
In terms of how I get in contact with people or source projects, I kind of just once I found a book, then I try to, I contact the author or the publisher, and I will keep emailing them within reason until I get a response. And so that was the case with Tamer Books, where I've done 2 books for them. I did Sitti Filistiniya by Huda Shawa, which is coming out as The Necklace of 7 Souls. And I co-translated that with Noor Jawjuli. And then also Sir Asad, Asad's Secret by oh my goodness, Atallah, Najla Atallah, also published with Tamil Books. So it's the same thing when I translate books for adults. Like you have to be motivated to find the authors and the books. But as Marcia said, having the Arabic, I think the literary translation community in general is very generous. Compared to what I've heard the author community is like. I have friends who are authors and translators, and they have said that translators are much more collaborative and generous. Yeah.
I was thinking from when you both started pitching and translating books, can we talk about different trends in terms of time? Like, for example, when we talk about the translation of Arabic books for adults, so one major event was Naguib Mahfouz winning the Nobel Peace Prize. For those who don't know, Naguib Mahfouz was a well-known Egyptian author. So him winning the Nobel Peace Prize in the 1980s did sort of get people interested in Arabic literature, and unfortunately 9/11. And then, the interest sort of, I imagine with YA, it goes up, it goes down. Have you been noticing those trends, or there aren't really trends? And where are we in the present moment?
I think from my observation, literature for young readers is way behind. I mean, it took the English language publishing world forever to be interested in Arabic literature at all. And I think it did not happen with Naguib Mahfouz's Nobel win, that generally led only more work by Mahfouz himself rather. That it was September 11 that began the increase in Arabic literature, which was in the beginning very ethnographic, and I think we still have this kind of ethnographic problem. But with literature for adults, it has been expanding, right? Especially since I mark Johel Hardi's International Booker win as a major shift, and books like by Buthaina Khalif, by Sawad's translation of Buthaina al-Aisa, and Khalid, Larry's translation of Khalid Khalif, these kind of prize-winning books that get the attention outside the bubble, as drawing publishers' attention to Arabic literature as literature. I think that with Arabic literature for young readers, we're still in this very early phase of, from my perspective, Sawad has been the only one, I think, to make any headway on this. The rest of us are out there just crying outside the door.
Oh, not like that. I was going to say that I haven't seen any particular trends in terms of content or style with YA, but what I will say is I think there's been an enormous amount of money put into workshops at different literary festivals for Arabic language authors to learn more about how to write YA and get your YA manuscript assessed. I think, and I'm sure any translator in this room can attest to this, whatever language you work from, but specifically for Arabic, when I'm working with writers of adult titles, it's all about the booker. I want to get the booker, we have to get on the list. And now with the announcement of the children's booker, right, which is for titles here in the UK between, I think it's 8 to 12, I've already seen, it was before this announcement, but I'm anticipating more, a larger wave now. But I had already seen the past year or two some of my authors dabbling in writing for younger readers, right? But now with this children's book, I'll definitely anticipate much more of a push, because everyone wants to have, their moment in the sun, and why not? And so if they're going to write for younger readers and hoping to make that list, I'll be yeah, go for it. So I'm really excited to see what this announcement of, because it's the same purse, it's the same amount of money that any writer for the adult booker will receive. I think it's like 50,000 or 60,000 pounds. Someone can correct me on that, but I'm really excited to see in all languages the sort of increase of writing for younger readers. Yeah.
And
I was just
yeah,
wondering,
on that note, oh, sorry. On that note, I do think that prizes do play a role, like the prize that used to be called the Etisalat Award for Arabic Children's Literature, having a YA category, I think did push not only writers, but publishers to be more interested in Arabic YA, in Arabic, not in translation. But I don't think we have yet seen the effect of the children's booker, but
yeah, not yet. I mean, like maybe people are like writing in their homes and, you know, or like attending workshops and this webinar even, you know what I mean? Like maybe more translators are, because it's English language books and translated books at the same time. They're being considered like side by side for the same price.
okay. I mean, just to give a bit more background about the Arabic Booker Prize, which is actually the International Prize of Arab Fiction, but I think they're sort of managed by the same body. And in terms of, I guess, its prestige and its weight in the prize giving community in the Arab region, it's quite significant. And also just to point out that, you know, the other Arab major prizes, I mean, the Etisalat Award is a prize just for Arabic children broadly. And every time they open a new category, people start to publish a bit right in those categories. They're quite lucrative prizes. It's the same with the Sheikh Zayed Award. They're really huge, like so it's quite yeah, they're really big pots of money. So it's normal that people try to sort of just for those who might not be have this background about the prize giving scene in the Arab world.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, I was talking about the international booker. So I have Arab authors who are emailing me saying that, yeah, they want to aim for
Okay, international
for the one here. And I have been told time and time again, unfortunately, but there is no relationship between the two. The IPAF has garnered this name of Arab Booker, but I've been told off a few times for saying it. So they are not managed by the same people. So just, because this is recorded, so I don't want them to be like, you didn't correct, whatever. Yeah, anyways, moving on.
Yeah. So just the question about, in addition to pitching books, you've done other sorts of initiatives to get more talk about translation of from Arabic into English, whether it's books for young people, for adults. And this includes, you know, specific web pages. It also includes like the Bila Hudud events. Just a bit, just for you to talk a bit about those initiatives. And are you planning anything in the future that you can tell us about?
oh God, are we planning anything, Sawad? You tell me.
Like so many, like you know, unrequited plans. Yeah.
Unrequited plans that do not love us back.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about what we did in the past. We, as Susanne kindly mentioned, we were funded by the UK government to do an online literary festival, which we called Bila Hudud, which means without borders, where and everything is still on YouTube and online. But we, you know, had a series of panels on everything from like Arabophone African literature to YA literature. It's all in English. And so this is something that I encourage people in the audience even like to try to seek out there if you are in whichever country, but like funding to do something like that in your particular area of literature or expertise. Another thing I try to do is just always when I'm running workshops is get people exposed to YA Arabic in literature, whether they are Arabic language speakers or not. And just to make people more aware of it, because not many people are like really think that it's such a thriving scene, but it really is, as you know, Marcia and you as well, Susanne had mentioned, like the Etisalat Prize in Arabic, like there are more authors now writing YA books. What is the quality of all of them? I mean, like as it is in English, French, or German, like it varies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have any other secret plans up my sleeve at the moment, other than just pitching some books, but yeah, hopefully, you know, something will stick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I am sometimes baffled at myself, right? Because there's no funding in any part of what Arab Lit does, but I'd say the least funding is for things that have to do with literature for young readers. So it, and sort of support and willingness to volunteer and participate. It's hard to get these. So Bila Hadouda, I think, was successful because we ran it as, you know, there was YA in the midst of a bunch of other things.
Mhm.
Whereas some of the other thing, the year after I opened Arab Lit, I opened the first website I tried to do for Arabic children's literature. And although like Taghreed, I mean, I think Taghreed and Fatma and Sonia, I mean, there were, all of my readers were the authors and publishers that we're talking about.
Mhm.
I did not reach an English language audience.
Mhm.
So I find this space, I find it the most compelling. I'm the most interested. I think part of what, part of the reason, if we want to roll back to my first answer, part of the reason I'm interested in this, when I was with my own kids, reading like books and stuff, some of the representation of the books you found in US libraries of the rest of the world, right? Like in the Magic Treehouse series, for instance, sorry for the whatever, but it's so yucky and exoticizing and cliche and blah, that I really felt like, boy, Jesus Christ, we need more
Yeah.
more literature translation to represent, not to represent, but to like wrench open the world.
Yeah. So this brings us very nicely to the next question, because in the seminar that I used to do, I would sort of present lists of uh, books written in English, usually by diaspora authors, or sometimes people who have nothing, they're not Arab, they're not Arab heritage. And this is for you, a chance to sort of put forward a manifesto. In talking to an audience, whether it's publishers or a general audience, what is it that readers get from a book translated directly from Arabic that they might not be getting from these other books? Okay, I'm not a huge fan of these other books, but some people like them, fair enough. But there's like they have different functions, they have different riches. So how would you sort of identify that?
I think for me, this also, because I'm from Pakistan, and initially in my career, there was a lot of like, why aren't you translating from Urdu? Like, the South Asian region, we have some very famous authors who are already writing in English.
Mhm.
And most recently, with The Tomb of Sand, that won the International Booker in Daisy Rockwell's glittering translation, translated from the Hindi. What I want to say is it's a very similar question, like why would you read a book translated from Tamil, Telugu, or Marathi from, South Asia when you can just, all these brown authors already writing in English, right? So the same thing here. And my sort of response to that is that anyone who is writing in English has had a very different life experience than someone who is writing in a language that is not English, whether that is like a disparity in economics or disparity in, which part of the country they've come from, what their sort of community looks like. I just think that the perspective is very different. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying it's different. And so for a long time, the sort of voices you were receiving from South Asia, but also from Arabic writers, Arabic language, I would say, sorry, Arab writers, is different. Now that we're having so many books, I think it's so many, but obviously in the grand scheme of things, it's not translated from Arabic into English. You're getting like a wider range of perspectives. And at times they're like, conflicting and overlapping, and it's a beautiful, like, sort of musical cacophony. But I think that's what makes it exciting, is we're coming up against like literary traditions and sort of stories that are different to this Western, conception of what is good literature. Having said that, specifically in YA is a space I'm finding myself having to fight's probably not the best word to term this, negotiate with publishers in terms of keeping the book as it is. As I mentioned, I've had to do things in conjunction with the author aging up the protagonists, aging them down, heightening romance, changing the ending, lengthening the book, you know, so all of this, it is it's concerning, but at the same time, I feel like if the author is you know, they know their limits and they know you know when they want to push back. But I think it's very important to get these stories into the hands of young readers, because I never got to read stuff like that, and I love YA, and I read all these books. Like I read all the YA translations of different, you know, languages from like Norwegian and other stuff, but particularly by brown and black authors, for me, it's really important to have those stories. Yeah.
Yep. Marcia?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, okay. So sometimes the books that are written in English directly are not by even somebody who comes from this area, but are it just like representing it on behalf of someone else. And sometimes this becomes, I mean, cringe is the wrong word, you know, a violation, honestly. But I think I would add to what Sawad was saying is that you also, from a different literary tradition, you have different ways of drawing the reader in, different things that are emphasized. I feel like there's a politics in, I mean, maybe people will run for the hills if I say that, publishers certainly would. In Arabic literature for young readers, that is often washed out of English language literature for young readers, like an interest in the world. And like if you look at the history of English and French literature would not be what they are today without Alf Layla wa Layla. It taught English language and French language writers so much about how to layer stories within stories. So the different ways in which stories are constructed is also important to bring over, and you know, to in the traveling of stories.
Yeah. So a final question for both of you. This is a chance where you get to pitch a book that has not yet been translated from Arabic into English, and to tell us why you think it should be translated. So maybe Sawad, you go first, and then Marcia.
Okay, just to give this caveat, my pitching sort of domain is email. This face-to-face pitch, not the best at, but I will give it a shot. And I want to say this is not a particular, I'm giving this as like a book to the audience that whoever wants to run with it, they should run with it. Because I think it's a great title and I just don't have time to do it. So it's called The Boy Called Azuz. It's by El Yasmin Books. It says that it's aimed for 8 to 12-year-olds, but if you actually, I have the PDF. If you look at it, it's more like 7 to 9 in English language market. And basically it's about a young boy, Azuz, living in 1940s Amman, and his father has to work in Jaffa, and it's about him taking on early responsibility in the family and caring, finding a doctor for his sister when she's ill and working in like a neighborhood store. But throughout like the story of him kind of growing up a little bit, you get to see like landmarks in Amman, which is why I'm saying it's like it kind of is giving you this little bit of ethnographic, but it's not like shoving it down your throat. So I loved the historical aspect of it. It's that this is like the history. It's like a love letter to Amman in my eyes. And I think it's like really sweet to have that, because my son in particular is like really interested in geography. And we just read this book called, and there's like no, I'll say the title, but it's called I think it's called The Pearl Diver or The Pearl Diver's Daughter. It's written by Julia Donaldson and illustrated by Maitha Al-Khayyat. So it's written in English, but they don't mention like that it's the United Arab Emirates at all throughout. And he's like, Mommy, I really wish that they had given more information about where the story is happening. And I found that so interesting. And I was like, why is that important? And he was just like, because I would have enjoyed it more. I mean, not every kid is like this, right? But sorry, not Julia Donaldson. It is it's not the Julia Donaldson. It's like because I know she did like the Gruffalo or whatever. It's if you look it up, it's Julia something. I'm so sorry. Maitha is not, no, she's the illustrator. She's the illustrator. Maitha Al-Khayyat is the illustrator for this book. Anyways, all I was trying to say with this is, yes, the book is called The Boy Called Azuz, and I think it's a perfect blend of like a young boy's life in the historical city of Amman. And the illustrations are beautiful, engaging, but how can you connect with me? I have a, sorry, I was looking at the chat. I have a website. You can email me there. But yeah, so that's the book I would like pitch. The author of this book, The Boy Called Azuz, is Tamara Kushaha, and the illustrator is Amani Youssef. Yeah.
And Tamara is a very funny writer. She's awesome. So yes, I second that. Yeah. How about you? Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Please
Go ahead, Sawad.
No, I was just responding to the chat. I'm not translating it into English. The book was written in English and it was illustrated by an Emirati illustrator. And I was just saying, but in the book, they'd have no mention of where the story takes place, even though it's understood to be the United Arab Emirates if you read like, about it. So anyways, that's it.
So over to you, Marcia.
Okay, I find this question very difficult because I'm actually not going to pick one because that seems impolite. And I'm a terrible pitcher. Now you'll see, I should take my opportunity. Okay, so I would love publishers to bring out more books by Maria Darouche. I think she's funny, she's warm, I love her characters. There's this one who took our cart, which is like a mystery in a refugee camp, and I can't understand why publishers are not interested in who took these little kids' cart. I certainly am very impassionedly interested. I think the art inside the book was a stumbling point, but you can redo the art, you guys. I have never understood why The Mystery of the Falcon's Eye has not gotten picked up in translation. It is compelling, interesting. It is ethnographically relevant. You can learn a lot from it. I don't know why publishers, does Tahrid have an agent? I mean, does Selwa just, maybe her daughter works as her agent. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it comes to differing publishing houses, Susanne was saying that there's in her introduction, that there's there's like with Selwa, both Tahrid and her daughters are fluent in English. But I think there's also sort of a cultural understanding. Like, I think that Dar Yasmin and Dar Saqi, I'm sure they have people who are fluent in English on staff, but what Selwa understands is they really deeply understand what English language publishers are looking for and can sort of speak that language of international children's literature. And then finally, Dragon of Bethlehem has to be published in English too.
Tell us a bit more about that book.
Okay, well, I wish Nada would unmute herself and tell us about it, but it's a fantasy novel in which a boy is being bullied, and a dragon comes, and and also because it's so hard to travel around Palestine, like with Sonia's, we've got a time traveling, sort of there has to be some sort of magic in order to get you to out of your sort of small area. In this case, we're flying overhead on the back again. Yes, see, Nada agrees with me.
So that was the final question. I don't know, Emma, is it you or me who's?
I think Patricia has been keeping track of questions in the chat. Thank you all so much. We'll do just a couple of questions, 10 minutes right now. So Patricia, if you want to come back on and just go ahead and read out a few questions from the chat, that would be great.
Thank you. And I'll focus on the questions that weren't answered within the chat, because there were some factual questions that our wonderful audience helped each other with. This is from Nadia Al-Kholi for hello, Susanne. Great to be with you on the webinar today, and thank you for your very informative presentation. I was just wondering why you didn't mention Egypt as a pioneer of children's lit in the Arab world and its very rich history and contribution to the field, with many early translations into English of works by Abdel Tawwab Yusuf, Yaqub al-Sharuni, from the early beginnings, moving to the various translations by Nadat Misr and Dar al-Shuruq, the two biggest publishers in Egypt of modern and contemporary fiction. Kindly.
so I did kind of focus more post-millennial, but I had mentioned very briefly that there are some publishing houses, and they're particularly, I think there's a few in the Gulf, one in the Gulf, but exactly, Dar Shuru and Nahdat Masr, who have put out sort of dual language copies, sort of versions of their books. So the Arabic and then the English ones. But because you were sort of talking about something else, that's why. Thank you for that question.
Shukran. Thank you so much, Susanne. This is a question from Jahan Muharram. I am from a publisher's perspective. I'm establishing a university press at American University of Sharjah. I had not considered publishing children's and YA books and was focused on academic monographs plus a trade imprint. However, I noticed that some UPs do publish in those areas like Hamad bin Khalifa UP and MIT UP, University Press is UP, guys. For those who might not know, do the panelists think this would be a good area for a UP in the Arab world to publish translated works in for children in YA, or is the market too crowded with other publishers focusing on this? In parentheses, there seems to be a lot of small publishers in the UAE alone focused on children's books. What do y'all think?
I think we all kind of in unison like nodded, and then we're like shaking our heads as not crowded. I think what is crowded is perhaps like picture books. I know there's a lot of picture books, but middle grade and YA for me is like a wide open space. I would highly encourage you to pursue that, and I think you will find great success, God willing. Yeah.
Wait, and are you good? I'm sorry. Can you answer in the chat? Are you planning to distribute just in the Emirates or outside of the Emirates as well?
Important question. Yeah.
Jahan, can you answer?
Okay.
Let me scroll down to see.
If you're also
outside as well,
distributing outside, yes, I absolutely think for chapter books, middle grade, and YA, there's a huge opportunity for anybody who, yes, also has the structure and understands the business of it, which, I don't.
Thank you. And there was a lot of interaction around that post. I have one, and I may have missed some, but there seem to be some answers within the text. There's a question from Summer Laurie. For those books that don't have geographic cultural grounding, how do you feel about adding a preface or note at the end of a translation that provides new readers with that background, as opposed to being asked to add that to the translation? I think this is much discussed in translation editorial notes, glossaries to provide context, so that presumably, yeah. So is that legible as a question? Can you answer? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot less paratext around literature for young readers than there is literature for adult readers, although I have definitely seen glossaries. Maps, I think, are useful. I would think that things like other kinds of paratext would be more useful, like a map, a recipe at the end, some alternate paratext versus a sort of more academic afterward, forward sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you for that. Lawrence Schimmel, your colleague, translator in the world, has been so active in the chat. Thank you, Lawrence. I just want to read his comment because I think it's really relevant to see what you all have to say about it. One comment about ethnographic works. These days, more and more authors are needing to write ethnographically in their own language because of the realities of displacement, diaspora, wars, etc. This is, for instance, also the case in Ukraine, where so many children are displaced right now. So writers for kids in the Ukraine are needing to write about, in capitals, their own culture in Ukrainian for these kids who are displaced. And this is also the case in many Arabic diaspora's displacements. I appreciate this point. What do you all think about that?
I'd like to hear what Susanne thinks. Sorry.
Yeah, you haven't had to answer any questions yet.
Yes, Susanne, this is on you.
I'm wondering if it's about, I don't know if it has more to do with personal preferences personal ways of writing. I mean, I definitely think that a sense of place is very important for like, I think that's a sign of a skill. And I think sometimes what happens with Arabic books, and this is another aspect, I mean, this is not so much a skills issue, but also because you have a unified Arab market, and sometimes publishers, they want a book that sort of can sell. And unfortunately, some of them do have an idea that's a book that's, you know, proudly local, might not sell so well. But I think they, unfortunately, sometimes they underestimate the curiosity of people from different parts of the world, of the Arab world. So that could be that. In terms of diaspora authors, I really can't really answer for them, unfortunately. But so that's it. I'm not sure if it's an individual style issue or more general thing related to the diaspora experience and a way of evoking where you came from in a sort of very sensory way.
Yeah, I mean, I think to speak to what you're saying also, I think the Arabic language publishers, when they're pitching, also, yeah, to European, American, other publishers, also have this notion that, yeah, specificity is bad. An Egyptian publisher was telling me, no, you can't. Nobody will ever in Marcel's work. It's too Egyptian. It's like what? Well, and now I've been proven right. People did like Imam Marcel's work, but what, you know, the idea that if it has that local cultural specificity, people will be kind of turned off by that. But I think, yeah, you're right. I think it's absolutely the opposite. People are engaged. Children are engaged. Children. I mean, I'm speaking for myself as a 13-year-old now. You know, we want to know. We want to see the world.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think what wouldn't it be grand if there was the, you know, the if English language publishers were open to Arabic literature that had like local, you know, a local sense and also a universal or an imaginative sense that was outside any particular world, right? I mean, you know, outside of our world even, that there could be, you know, fantastical literature, you know, that those imaginative authorial feats are also something that are of interest for translation. Okay, question for Anam Zafar, another translator from Arabic. When looking for Arabic Kidlit to pitch, do you rely on / prioritize books? Oops, I lost it. Anam, I lost your question. Let me find it. Oh, here, I got it. Do you rely on prioritized books that have won prizes or been long or shortlisted? Does that make a difference to English language publishers for Arabic Kidlit specifically?
In my experience for Arabic Kidlit specifically, no, it doesn't make a difference. And even for adult literature, I had a Granta editor tell me, like, I don't care if it won the IPAF. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. Like, that was like a pretty extreme reaction. Having said that, like some editors do want, you know, there to have been like prize winning titles and just to get that like stamp of approval from of critical acclaim from a different culture. But for YA, it's very much about like what they want and their taste and what they're looking for, in my experience. But I'm not sure if Marcia has had a different experience when pitching.
No, I completely agree. I think that, for instance, the International Prize for Arabic Fiction has gotten some traction in terms of belief among English language publishers that it matters. But when I was pitching Wondrous Journeys, nobody cared about that. They're like, the what prize? I mean, I think you have to do a lot of work with your prize in order to, and I think there's, you know, an Arabic prize is also overcoming a kind of a prejudice as well. Like if you say you've got a Femina prize or the Goncourt, maybe the publisher, well, probably the publisher does know what those are. Yeah. But even if they didn't, oh, it's a French prize. This also somehow carries some sort of prestige or esteem automatically that an Arabic prize has to fight for.
Yeah. I think also the way it works with prizes, especially the more lucrative ones, because, like for example, with the British Booker Prize, it's, I mean, okay, 50,000. It's not 50,000 pounds. It's not a bad, amount of money to get, because they're also counting on translators and publishers from all over the world getting interested in that book, in sales automatically jumping. But what happens with Arab prices, the money comes from the price directly. There isn't necessarily, even though I think somebody has or should do a study about it, to what extent does it translate into sales? I think also, especially in the Arab world, with some distribution issues, sometimes if a book is published in another country, it's not so simple to get it in your own country.
I do find that if I'm book shopping here in Morocco, I'm more likely to see IPAF shortlisted books than I am most. It does make the book travel. But for instance, like the Etisalat Prize for Arabic Children's, I've never seen those travel additionally.
Thank you all. This may be the last question because we're time-wise, but Melissa Krajcik, I think, if I'm apologize around your surname, what Arabic literary agents are out there? I know Bears Factor and soon Rikaza. How do people find the rights holders? This has seemed very inconsistent to me, as Marcia knows. It's a kind of technical question, but it's important, you know. Does anybody want to speak to this? Yeah.
Well, I think that Ruth decided against launching an agency. Sawad, and Susanne, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she is not going to do that. And I think Yasmina has moved, Avraya agency has moved away from literature for young readers, unless it's by one of her, like if somebody Uzbek wrote a novel for young readers, I'm sure she would represent it. I just think that with literature for young readers, we're mostly relying on the translator as representative.
Yeah, with regards to agents representing Arabic language authors, the UAE is seeing quite some growth. So there's Rolla Banna. If you follow her on Instagram, I'll write it in the chat, but I'm forgetting the name of her agency. There's also, I think, one called like the Sharjah Literary Agency. If you just Google something around that, they have quite a like growing cohort of authors. Thank you so much. Wow, Lawrence is like still lightning. And yeah, so exactly, Tamer Said. But Melissa, what I would say in terms of finding rights holders is generally for Arabic always the authors and not the publishers, unless it's Al Mutawassit, you're dealing with the publisher in Italy, but that's not for YA. And it is always a kind of like a slog for any translators, and that's why you got to make more friends with Arabic language translators, and because someone will know how to get there, hopefully, but sometimes it can take up to 7 months to find the rights holder and get in contact with them. Sometimes it can take a week. Like, it's very variable because majority of Arabic language authors do not have representation. And so it's just a matter of finding them on Instagram or Facebook or something. Yeah.
And even when they're pitching their books to Arab publishers, they sort of do kind of pitch books, one by one. They pitch them to the publishers that they work with most often. And if sometimes that publisher is not willing to publish it, they sort of have to shop around different publishers.
Lovely. Thank you all. I'm going to say thank you from Outside Your World and from myself. Shukran jazilan. Thank you so very much. You guys were absolutely amazing. Thank you, audience. You've been incredible. Thank you for your engagement and all the wisdom that you brought to this. Good luck with all your projects. Let's keep in touch. I'll let Emma close us out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, from me as well and from the CBCP.